The entrepreneurial journey is rocky, up and down, full of uncertainties and risks. So, LSE Generate is the London School of Economics Entrepreneurship Center, and it supports students, alumni, and staff at any stage of their entrepreneurial journey who want to build a purpose aligned business. And my role is the head of social innovation. So, I bring in the social impact, social entrepreneurship lens across all levels of program.
This is a message to an early stage social entrepreneur who is in a period of adversity and challenge. What would you write in that page for them to read?
I'd encourage them to think back about what is their why, what was their North Star that inspired them and pushed them to start their social enterprise. So again, that the problem that they wanted to solve and being married to it. And so if it requires them to pause and reflect, change direction, partner with someone else, stop doing something, start doing something, giving space and time to reflect on that.
Welcome to the Social Impact Journal with me, your host, Jack Farron. This is the podcast where I talk to change makers around the world driving social impact. And this week we have a really special episode with our very first guest from episode 1, Dr Paroma Bhattacharya. She is the head of social innovation at the London School of Economics and Political Sciences Entrepreneurship Centre, LSE Generate, and we'll be talking about all things social entrepreneurship. Please make sure to share with your colleagues and friends and do follow us on social media channels. So Paroma, thanks so much for coming. It's good to have you now on episode 50, a repeat of our very, very first episode on the podcast. So thanks for coming and glad we can do one in person.
Thank you, Jack. It's great to be here. I'm still remembering the first episode and how we recorded on Zoom. And it's so nice to come here in this amazing studio and chat face to face and see how much the podcast has grown as well. So really excited to be here.
Amazing. Thank you. So let's start. You work at the LSE. So what is your role specifically at LSE Generate?
Yeah. So LSE Generate is the London School of Economics Entrepreneurship Center, and it supports students, alumni, and staff at any stage of their entrepreneurial journey who want to build a purpose-aligned business. And my role is the head of social innovation. So I bring in the social impact, social entrepreneurship lens across all levels of programming. I work with stakeholders within the school and outside the school as well. So working with various departments, with the program teams for workshops, trainings, and lectures, but also with our international partners across various countries to deliver these action research projects where we create evidence-based social entrepreneurship and innovation programs. So right now I'm working on projects in Kenya, India, Sierra Leone, Rwanda, covering various aspects of social entrepreneurship.
Nice. So how does it work in practice? Let's say you're an alumni of the university. So you can go to LSE Generate, say we have a business idea, and then get the support required.
Yes, absolutely. So it doesn't matter whether you're a current student, you graduated last year or 50 years ago. If you have a social business idea or a business idea and are looking to launch, you can come to LSE Generate and we're your first point of reference. And then we'll guide you depending on what stage you're at and what support you need. So if you're really early, pre-idea stage or idea stage, you can go through some ideation sessions, skill building workshops, talking to mentors to flesh out your idea. And then we have funding competitions depending on what stage you're at. So idea stage or live business or growth stage. If you're a bit further along, you can apply to LSE Generate's flagship accelerator program, which is called GAP, Generate Accelerator Program, where we select 10 startups a year. It's a 12-week intensive cohort program along with seed funding, grant funding, ending with the demo day, where we invite all the relevant ecosystem stakeholders to showcase these startups. We have, because LSE's alumni base is largely international, we have 20 international chapters across the world that are run by alumni ambassadors on the ground. So people who are entrepreneurs or who are embedded in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, who we then support to run events and bring the ecosystem together in those locations. And that's another way we support people who want to build their businesses even after they've graduated and gone back to their home countries.
Fantastic. And you mentioned staff as well.
Yeah, staff as well. So any staff members who are thinking of also launching businesses, they're welcome to come to us. There's another team within LSE called LSE Innovation that focuses on working with researchers to commercialize their research and build spin out ventures. And ours is more general, sort of equipping staff with the basic knowledge and skills they need around building a business, and just inspiring them, exposing them to the community. We have a vibrant Slack channel with over 2,000 members, a co-working space in the heart of campus where we have students and alumni and entrepreneurs coming and going. So it's just, inspiring them, putting that seed of inspiration and thought into their minds and giving them food for thought to build it further.
Brilliant, brilliant. So how would you define what a social entrepreneur is?
So a social entrepreneur, I mean, just to look at the two words, social and entrepreneur. So it would be first someone who is looking to address any of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So there are 17, ranging from social issues to environmental issues, from the micro to the macro. So anyone who has an explicit focus on addressing one of the Sustainable Development Goals and create social or environmental impact through an entrepreneurial and innovative model. So someone who uses capital or various types of resources and mobilizes them in an interesting, innovative way to address a UN sustainable goal. So when I'm talking about resources, it's financial capital, human capital, social capital, and putting them together, configuring them in a way that's interesting, innovative, new to the context, in order to have an end impact in terms of social or environmental good. That's how I would define a social entrepreneur.
Brilliant. And I know you're in this every day, living and breathing social innovation and social entrepreneurship. So what kind of trends are you seeing in terms of popularity of social enterprises from those within LSE and also outside?
I'd say this is definitely becoming more and more popular and mainstream. LSE Generate, as we started out, was the entrepreneurship center in general, so not specifically for social enterprises, but because maybe LSE's motto is, to understand the causes of things for the betterment of society. Also, all programs, no matter what you're studying, pushes students to think critically about the root causes of problems and unintended effects, creating positive impact. So organically, we were seeing that more than 50% of the businesses coming through were purpose aligned in some way, looking to address the SDGs in some way, and hence that's become a bigger part of our identity and a more central focus now. And it ranges across sectors and geographies, but we're definitely seeing some sectors that are coming, that are really popular with students now. So anything in environment, climate tech, sustainability, responsible AI, fintech. We have a lot in sustainable food and beverage, sustainable fashion, mental well-being. So because these are the clusters that have organically emerged as popular with our student base, we're now trying to develop verticals that give more thematic input to people who are coming through for these themes.
And when you see these startups and entrepreneurs, what kind of traits are you looking for to determine what a successful social entrepreneur could be?
Yeah, so I think again, looking at the two core elements, social and entrepreneurial. On the social side, we're really looking for someone who's very passionate about the social cause that they want to address, and this passion comes from a variety of sources. But often, the person has a very personal connection or experience with the cause that they want to address, which builds and the passion leads to resilience, because the entrepreneurial journey is rocky, up and down, full of uncertainties and risks. And a lot of external challenges and shocks can come your way, like the pandemic. So as someone who's really passionate about the cause at a deeper level tends to be more resilient to see those challenges through. So that's what we're looking for, passion and resilience on the social side. In terms of the preneurial skills, those would be things that exemplify innovation. So problem solving in an interesting way, creative thinking, ability to take risks, and then and being okay with failure and or failing fast, and failing quickly, and embodying taking those learnings from the failures and putting them back into their venture. And then also collaboration. So not just working in silos, but ability to bring together various stakeholders as part of the bigger vision of the organization and collaborating with them to sort of create a ripple effect of impact.
Yeah, so maybe we can touch on a few of those areas. First, on the passion on the social side.
Yeah.
I remember in our first episode, you said something that stuck with me, and it was for to marry the problem, not
Yes.
the solution.
Correct.
What did you mean by that?
So, I mean, that is something that when I had my first job after my master's, I was working at a social enterprise incubator in India. And this is what my mentor told me then. And it stuck with me. And it's something that I pass on through my classes as well. And it seems to resonate with a lot of people. So, essentially, it goes back to my point about resilience and passion for the social cause. And it's all about understanding what's your North Star. What is it that you want to address or solve through a social enterprise, and what end impact do you want to create, and being focused on that. Because a lot of times in the entrepreneurial and innovation space, people are idea first. They're very excited about an idea or solution and are more focused on delivering that and sort of being the best at something. But what defines a social entrepreneur is that commitment to addressing the problem and being passionate about that problem in their local context or whatever context that they are looking to address. Because along the entrepreneurial journey, many things might happen that might require the solution to change or pivot or iterate in order to better address the problem. So not being so married to the solution that even if the solution is not a right fit for the problem, they keep sticking to that.
Yep.
But being married to the problem so that if the solution is to iterate or pivot in order to better address the problem, they're able to do that.
For sure, for sure. And then on the entrepreneurial side, you mentioned two things. So you mentioned risk, and you also mentioned the innovation side. So how does a social entrepreneur balance those two things? The need for innovation, but then also risk management.
I think this is a the heart and core of entrepreneurship, but especially social entrepreneurship, because social entrepreneurship is all about balancing dualities and paradoxes, because it has these hybrid goals of creating impact for purpose but also being financially sustainable, which and having that profit bottom line as well. And they can seem quite contradictory, but in fact bringing them together in an innovative way is what defines social entrepreneurship. So for social entrepreneurs, one of the critical skills is something which is called both and thinking, which is looking at things not from an either or mindset but from a both and mindset. There's a great book out right now as well called Both and Thinking by Wendy Smith, which I would recommend as well. But essentially it's being able to frame contradictions in a way that they work together, and you don't need to do, if you do one, you're not sacrificing the other. Being aware of the risks that come with both and figuring out an organizational system or a process that allows you to move between them. And there are many practical ways that you can do it. As an entrepreneur, you have to think from two lenses. So there's the promotion lens and the prevention lens. Promotion lens is about making the most of opportunities and saying yes, and capitalizing and everything that comes in your way. But the prevention focus is being aware of risk, being aware of what can go wrong, mitigating them. And you need to have both lenses on so that you don't go too far on being too conservative but also spreading yourself too thin. And so this is a capability that entrepreneurs need to develop, but also something that they can bake in and build into their organization through processes. So hiring complementary team members who have a stronger lens in terms of one of these two things, in terms of their personality traits or the kind of roles or profiles they have. There's also another framework that is very useful for social entrepreneurs, which is guardrails. So you build guardrails that protect your social mission and your business mission. And what guardrails are essentially are team members, types of roles in the organization, types of board advisors that you have, types of processes that you build in. And the whole idea is that there's a lot of pressure on the entrepreneur to be this charismatic, visionary leader who can balance everything. But that's not sustainable in the long run. Everything depends on one person. So it's important to move away from just the person to a process that sustains this in the long run and puts it in autopilot. So if you take more things off the person and bake it into the organizational DNA, then it becomes sustainable and goes into autopilot, and then they can balance these dualities in a more consistent way in the long run.
I wanted to ask, when students or alumni come to Generate and they talk about maybe some of the challenges that they're facing, I imagine one of them would be, especially for early stage social ventures, that there is one person that needs to kind of balance all those plates. Is that one of the most common challenges that you hear from those that you're supporting?
Absolutely, because a lot of times it's a solo founder who's coming, and the solo founder, as it is, can be quite a solitary and overwhelming journey. And then that person needs to be everything and wear all the hats and manage all the sort of dualities. It
You're the
can get
accountant, you're the HR,
yeah,
the hirer and the
exactly.
firer.
Exactly. It can get quite overwhelming. And the ones who are co-founders, I think, have a bit more support because each person can play a different role, but still quite overwhelming in the early stages. So one of the key questions I get is, okay, this all sounds great, but like, how can I practically do all of this as a single founder or as a small organization? Which is a very valid point. So it's about form. It's about function, not form. So think about the function that this performs in your organization, building the capacity as an organization to balance paradoxes or dualities. And it doesn't matter the form it takes. I mean, if you're a very large, mature organization, you can afford to have a board of advisors and team members that do various things. But as a scrappy, resource-strapped organization, how can you build in this capacity in leaner, cheaper, no-cost ways? So finding mentors who bring in a complementary skill set or a lens and hold you accountable to things that may not be automatically your strong suit.
Yep.
Or finding a peer group where there are different perspectives, and someone who's really strong in maybe the business aspect and you're really strong on the social aspect, and then having regular check-ins with your peer body to see what's going right, what's going wrong, where can I improve. So I think in the early stages, it's really about having a network or a community of supporters, well-wishers, whether it's in the form of an advisor or a mentor, could be a professor, could be someone who works at an incubator, or just a community of other entrepreneurs who you can just bounce ideas off as you build your resources to then grow your organization slowly.
Yeah. So what tips would you have then for our audience if they are just starting out now and they're looking to build that network, whether that is a mentor or a peer group? What tips would you have in how to approach that?
I think one of the projects I'm working on right now is around founder mental well-being. So looking at early stage founders in India and the UK around their well-being. And a common thing that's come up for everyone is that it is a solitary and lonely journey, and the importance of having a community of like-minded peers who are going through the similar challenges, who you can share with and vent if you need to vent, and just learn from to build that collective resilience. So I think it's important to find your tribe or your community, and that will vary depending on where in life you are. Or if you're in university, you can often find them in universities. Like LSE Generate is a community. You come to the co-working space, you meet your peers. If you're not in a university or an organizational setup, there are a lot of incubators, accelerators, entrepreneurial networks, and depending on your country or context, you'll find them. And some of them are just entrepreneurial, some of them are social entrepreneurial. But essentially, the function that they play is bringing together entrepreneurs who are at possibly a similar stage in the entrepreneurial journey, and connecting them through WhatsApp groups or social media channels, in-person events, online events. Sometimes they're themed, so okay, it could be about knowledge building and learning a skill, but sometimes it's just about showing up, meeting someone, expanding your network, feeling like you have support on your
Someone that kind of
entrepreneurial journey.
knows exactly the journey you're taking.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly. Because even as mentors or advisors, maybe I've heard that only an entrepreneur can truly grasp sort of the pain points of various challenges on the entrepreneurial journey. And sometimes just talking to someone like that can be extremely reassuring and therapeutic even. And that's something that's come up a lot in my focus groups that I'm doing around well-being for entrepreneurs.
I mean, it's so true. It's so true because, when you're trying to even build your brand, let's say on LinkedIn, people share their achievements and how fantastic they are in certain, awards or conferences. But, even having a place to vent,
Yeah,
I think from personal experience, it's so important to have people that can resonate with you and understand maybe they've walked that journey or they're walking that journey right now. I think that support network is so critical, as you say.
absolutely. And a space that's a safe space, non-judgmental, where there's no ulterior motives. It's just about supporting each other. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So if we are then setting up a social enterprise, we're at that stage.
Yeah.
So you're looking to find a support network.
Yeah.
Maybe you're looking to find a co-founder.
Yeah.
What tips would you have for trying to find the perfect co-founder that you can work with on this mission-based organization?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question. I'd say, first of all, a deep awareness of yourself as a founder in terms of your strength, your weaknesses, and what role you envision that you will play in the big picture of your organization, and then understanding what's that complementary profile that you need to bring on the team so that both people can together take this organization to the next level. So it could be in terms of focus on the business mission, social mission, the promotion focus or prevention focus, just personality traits in terms of teamwork or leadership or delegation, task management, partnership management, business, sales. Not everyone needs to be amazing at everything. You can be really good at what you do and find a great co-founder who's really good at what they do, and together you're a dream team.
Definitely.
And so I think first being very self-aware, and then you can find the perfect partner. In terms of where to find, I think this is something that takes time and not something you should be rushing into, because it's like a serious long-term relationship that you're entering into. And it really is about finding an alignment on values, because you don't have to agree on everything, but when push comes to shove and you have to take a tough decision about the organizational future, that values alignment is important in terms of why you're doing this, what is the higher purpose of the organization. And if there's a mismatch there, then it leads to co-founder trouble. So, where to find these people, again, being part of these networks and communities are really important. So going for networking events, meetups. I've seen some organizations having speed dating for future co-founders or things like that. But just basically going somewhere where there'll be like-minded people at various stages. You don't know what persona your future co-founder will have, whether they're as early stage as you or they're more experienced, but being open-minded, but being clear in terms of the kind of skills you're looking for and the kind of value alignment you're looking for, and then building the relationship over time, having conversations, very real conversations, expectation settings, and then slowly entering into that relationship.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So if we find our co-founder, we're now looking at what type of organizational model to focus on for the venture. So maybe if you can just share the range of different organization models that could be considered for a social enterprise.
Yeah. So I'd say something I teach in class is like an organizational spectrum of balancing profit and purpose. So if you look at the extreme left, you probably have a traditional nonprofit where the core bottom line is impact, and they're primarily grant funded or donor funded, something like a Red Cross, that sort of organization. Though increasingly, even these sort of organizations are looking to be more financially sustainable. And then at the other end of the spectrum is your, traditional for-profit, where the core bottom line is profit. But something like a Microsoft maybe, but they are again looking now increasing focus on ESG and sustainability, social entrepreneurship, to make sure that they're doing more innovative internally to do capitalize on impact. So even at these extreme ends, you're seeing movement towards being more social entrepreneurial in nature. But in the middle, I'd say, is where various social enterprises kind of fall. So after the traditional nonprofit is your entrepreneurial nonprofit. So it's still a nonprofit because the social cause that they want to address lends itself better to a nonprofit setup. And they might be primarily grant funded, but they have figured out an additional revenue generating activity that is bringing in quite a bit of revenue that helps them to be not just dependent on donors. So an example would be Girl Scouts USA. So they're heavily donor dependent, but everybody knows about their cookie sales, and that's a big revenue generator. So that's an example probably of an entrepreneurial nonprofit, and we see many examples of this now. And then you have the social enterprise, the integrated sort of model, which is where an organization's revenue generation activities is also how they generate more impact. So the more revenue you earn, the more impact you create. And that's what we would call a social enterprise integrated. So a popular example is Digital Divide Data. So they were sort of the pioneers of the impact sourcing model. Impact sourcing is when you intentionally build capacity of an underrepresented or marginalized group, and then hire them in your organization to deliver goods and services. So they started off several years ago, I think 15, 16 years ago, I don't remember the exact date, in Cambodia, working with youth from underrepresented communities, training them in tech skills, and then hiring them within the organization to deliver data annotation and coding services for big companies worldwide. Fast forward many years, now they're in several countries, and they work with Fortune 500 companies and universities, and have graduated thousands of alumni, which is who they've hired internally, but also placed in other organizations going forward. So the more company contracts they have, and the more youth they can employ, and that's how it builds step by step. And then you also have the social enterprise interlinked, where legally they have a same overall vision, but the entities might be separated but interlinked. So they might have a for-profit entity that focuses more on the business activities, and they have a non-profit entity that focuses more on the impact entities. So an example would be Redemption Roasters in the UK. I think they started off as interlinked, trying to do everything under one umbrella. But essentially, what they do is they train people who are just about to leave prison in coffee roasting, barista skills, and then they place them in their cafes that they have across London to reduce reoffending rates by preparing them for society, giving them skills, and giving them jobs. But the number of people they could place in the cafes was possibly capped because it's a physical location still, which is why now they have another entity as well, which trains more people, and the placements can go broader than just the Redemption Roaster cafes. So that's the interlinked. And then you have a socially responsible business, which may not necessarily be thinking about impact the same way as a social enterprise does, but it's still things that creating good or operating in a socially responsible way is part of their DNA. So examples would be benefit corporations, B Corps, organizations like Patagonia, who donate proceeds, or buy one give one models. And then the traditional for-profit. So it's a whole range. And in the middle, different organizational forms mix and match purpose and profit in the way that works for them. But I think anyone who leads any of these organizations needs to think innovatively about how they mobilize resources for the purpose of addressing a social impact or environmental goal. So I would categorize any of them as social entrepreneurs leading these organizations.
Right, thanks for giving us that. Now we have the broad spectrum of different social enterprises. So I'd be really keen to hear some of your favourites. I know you just given me some really strong examples there of different enterprises. So we can start with maybe more well-known organisations.
Sure.
Are there any social ventures that you've studied, or maybe you use as case studies in class, where you think they've been a perfect example of how to run a social enterprise?
I think I had the pleasure of inviting the founder of Algramo for one of our events for the students, and I found him to be a very inspiring social entrepreneur, but Algramo to be a very interesting case as well. They really revolutionized the refilling and environmental sustainable consumption movement, where they created a mindset shift in terms of using refillable packaging for various types of household goods. And when Jose tells his story, he says how he started off as a small store, mom and pop store in Chile, and now they're in several countries working with some of the biggest retailers and have really grown and scaled. So I think that's an excellent example of a social enterprise that has impact baked into its revenue model, and that is creating mindset shift for something like sustainability, which is often hard to change consumer patterns, but they've managed to do quite well. Another example, which I always find interesting because it doesn't neatly fit into any of the categories I mentioned, but is Robin Hood Army, which started in India, but now it's in more than 13 countries across the world. But essentially, they're a zero funds organization. What they're aiming to do is they're trying to tackle hunger and food, lack of food. So one of the founders, Neil Ghosh, I've had the pleasure of inviting as well, and there's a Harvard Business case study on this organization, used to work for Zomato, which is a food delivery service.
Okay.
And then they were seeing that a lot of these restaurants often have excess food that would go to waste, or there are events that are excess food going to waste. And on the flip side, there are a lot of people living on the streets who don't have regular access to food. So instead of preventing that food wastage, how can you pick that up and give it to people who want that food? So that it started off as a very simple idea and very volunteer run at a local level. But basically, they managed to build this massive organization with chapters all over the country in India, but now all over the world as well, which is purely volunteer run. One of their core values is we're not going to spend any money, we're not going to get any money. So we have to be zero funds.
Zero funds organization.
Zero funds organization. So everything that they manage to attract in terms of resources is through partnerships, or people donating in kind, whether that time, whether it's food, whether it's advertising space. A lot of celebrities who are like they're ambassadors and get things on board. And everything the volunteers give in also, including the senior management team, is again voluntary as well, and all of them have full-time jobs alongside.
Wow.
And so now, and to create more long-term impact, they also have now neighborhood chapters, so to make sure that the same people, maybe there's a set of people, homeless people in a particular area, that they've identified, so that they get regular food from the local restaurants as well. So I just find it a very interesting organizational model that has managed to grow and scale and continues to grow and scale without any resources. So that's another way that they innovatively mobilize in-kind resources for social good. Yeah.
So in terms of the transportation of the food, again, from volunteers?
So they go to the restaurants or to the event spaces, they pick up the food, and then if it's close by, then they just set up on the street, or like people have cars and they would drive it. So everything, or if it's a larger scale, sometimes they have these massive campaigns around specific holidays or religious festivals, then they would organize bigger transportation, but everything is donated by someone or the other through their networks, and the ownership is really on the local chapter head, and then they sort of create the leadership, harness the social cause passion of all of their volunteers as well, and then they have a national team with representatives of every city chapter as well, to make sure that they know what's happening on the ground. They can adapt and pivot their form depending on what the needs are. It's very interesting. So yeah, for anyone who's interested, there's a Harvard Business case study on it. Very interesting organizational model.
Yeah, I'll check it out. What a fantastic way to, as you say, mobilize in-kind resources.
Yeah.
So you define them as a zero funds.
Yeah, that's how they define themselves. Yeah, we are a zero funds organization. We take no money, we give no money, in terms of how we operate. Yeah.
So Paroma, thank you so much for all of the insights today. But a question I asked to all of my guests, I asked you in episode 1, and here we are in episode 50. If you had your own social impact journal, but just could write one page, and on that page, this is a message to an early stage social entrepreneur who is in a period of adversity and challenge, what would you write in that page for them to read?
I'd say I'd encourage them to think back about what is their why, what was their North Star that inspired them and pushed them to start their social enterprise. So again, that the problem that they wanted to solve, and being married to it. And so if it requires them to pause and reflect, change direction, partner with someone else, stop doing something, start doing something, giving space and time to reflect on that, while remembering why they started and what's the best way to address that problem going forward. But alongside that, I would also ask them to prioritize themselves, because we see high rates of burnout and negative effects of mental well-being among entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs. So it's important to prioritize yourself as well, in terms of what sort of work-life balance do you want to have? What does it mean to be you beyond your social enterprise as well? And also finding your community, your tribe of other entrepreneurs that you can lean on, and who can support you to build that resilience, and help you see through this tough period. So that passion for the cause and a community of people who you can lean on, I think these are the two key things that would help social entrepreneurs to be resilient in periods of adversity.
Brilliant. That's a fantastic page, and I think it's a good way to end the show. Paroma, thanks so much for coming on. If any of our audience want to connect with you on social media or other, how can they find you?
Yeah, so absolutely happy for anyone to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find my email address on the LSE Generate website as well. So yeah, just drop me a line. If you're an aspiring social entrepreneur, you're working in this space and you want to chat, always happy to connect with like-minded people in the space. And thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the episode, and hopefully there was many, many tips for social entrepreneurs around the world that are listening to the show. If you did enjoy the show, please do share it with your colleagues or friends, and do leave a rating if you're listening to the show. See you next week on Monday for our newest episode of the Social Impact Journal.